Could this be the original Moonswatch? Well, Swatch produced this watch in 1992, and its name is the Moonshadow. So let's take a closer look. So I've been an avid fan of the Moonswatch ever since its release, and I stumbled across this Chronograph by Swatch, and I thought it just looked cool. So they call it the Moonshadow, and it's all dark. Even the acrylic crystal is darkened. You can see it's monochrome, and I just thought it had a coolness factor about it. Now, if you're familiar with Swatch, you know that they pretty much produce certain models in certain sizes. This one is their 37mm chronograph line from the 1990s. And what they do is they just change the colors, they change the dial design, and they produce a whole bunch of watches using that same case. And this just happens to be one of the different colorways within this series. So let's go over the dimensions of this watch. This is their 37mm chronograph lineup. So it has a case diameter of 37mm. It has a thickness of 11mm. Lug to lug is 43mm. And the lug width is 17, but it does use the Swatch proprietary lug system, so you have to have Swatch compatible straps. This one actually shipped on a plastic strap. Now, one issue with these older vintage watches is that usually the straps, they get dried out and brittle. This one still has some flexibility to it, so I think I can actually wear this one. So looking at the details of this watch, you can see it's all black. It has a black pushers, black crown, which is a push-pull crown. At the 2 o'clock position, we have a 30-minute counter for the chronograph. At 6 o'clock, we have our running seconds. At 10 o'clock is a 12-hour chronograph counter. So one unique thing about this watch is that it will actually count up to 12 hours. A lot of newer quartz only count up to 60 minutes. And I believe this one will actually count past 12 hours if you just let it run. So it's not going to stop until you actually stop it with the pusher. Let me go ahead and start the chronograph for you. We simply push the top pusher, you get a nice click, and we can see the large sweep second hand starting to tick at 1 tick per second. And as that moves around the dial, it will advance the minute hand 1 minute. And then to reset it, you simply push it to stop it and push the lower pusher to reset. And should the chronograph hands get out of alignment, they can be recalibrated by pulling the crown and using the top and bottom pushers to recalibrate the small chronograph hands. We see a Swatch logo at the 12 o'clock position and a monochrome dial. You can see the hands are skeletonized with no loom. The crystal is also darkened, so it kind of has a shadow effect. That's why they call it the Moonshadow, obviously. Yeah, just a pretty cool looking watch. It really caught my eye. And one thing that Swatch does is that they actually date their dials. If we try to zoom in here, we can see that this has a date of 1992. And let's take a look at the back. If you're new to Swatch, the Swatch cases are completely sealed, so they're not meant to be serviced at all. So in order to change the battery, Swatch had to design a special battery cover, and that just basically untwists with a nickel or a coin, and you can access the battery. So it's actually pretty easy to replace the battery, much easier than a lot of other quartz watches that you have to fight with taking the case back off. We can see on the back it says Swiss made, 22 jewels. This has a 22 jeweled quartz movement, which I believe is made by ETA, which is owned by Swatch Group. Now the movement in the Swatch being 22 jewels is an earlier version of the ETA G10. So the G10 that they're currently using in the Moonswatch, I believe, is only 4 jewels. And the main difference is that this one has a 30-minute counter at the 2 o'clock position, whereas the Moonwatch has a 1/10 second counter. And at the 10 o'clock position, this one has a 12-hour counter versus a 60-minute counter. Yeah, very, very cool watch. I'm You know, I'm kind of new to Swatch. I had a Swatch Calypso diver when I was in high school, and that was in the 1980s, and I haven't owned a Swatch since then. So generally, Swatch is not well respected within the watch community, and I believe it's because they typically have plastic cases, they use an acrylic crystal, the cases themselves are non-serviceable, so you cannot access the movement, and the lug design is a proprietary Swatch design, so you're forced to use Swatch designed straps. Now there are aftermarket straps available, so that's not a big deal, but obviously you can't just go to your drawer and just pick out a regular strap that you might have from your existing watches. Before I put the watch on my 6.5-inch wrists, let's do a wrist check. So this happens to be another Swatch that I purchased. This is part of their Irony series. It's actually made out of aluminum, so it's super light. This one's called Freezing Snow. So pretty cool watch. Yeah, just a lot of neat watches that Swatch has from the 1990s that I was really unaware of. And here is the watch on my 6.5-inch wrist on the supplied strap. Now this has a plastic strap and it is wearable, not super comfortable, but I think this would be much nicer on a leather strap. So if you find these watches on the popular auction sites, you're typically going to pay anywhere from about $50 US up to maybe $100 US, depending on the condition. Now this one I found was advertised as new old stock, and it really is. So it looks like it's in brand new condition, and it actually shipped in the original Swatch case. Well, there you go. This is the Swatch Moonshadow. And like I said, if you are interested in picking one of these up, you're going to have to find one secondhand or new old stock. If you have any questions, please leave them down below, and thank you for watching.